Hello and welcome back to what will be the final game that we're reviewing of Clutch Gaming for their spring split, and it is against Cloud9, so definitely a tough opponent to end out the split on. Still coming up with the roster changes that were brought in on Saturday's game against KSM, with Piglet going into the mid lane and then Cody's son coming in from the academy team into the bottom lane, and Demonte being benched. Let's see what Clutch Gaming can bring us today. So Clutch actually ended up banning Silas, Thresh, and Jace. So Silas and Jace don't surprise me at all. The Thresh ban might be a little bit targeted at Diamond. Thresh is also just really strong. He was slightly nerfed. I think patch 9.4, it might have been 9.3. But it doesn't take out how oppressive he's been since the meta of immobile carries has been brought back. Whenever there's an immobile carry that ends up being really strong, Thresh becomes strong because of the power of his lantern becomes more important. The Rise ban, interesting. I don't think the Rise ban is particularly important, but the Cassiopeia ban and the Aurelia ban are very expected. We know that Clutch Gaming like Aurelia, we know that they like Cassiopeia, they're willing to flex both picks. I'm sure that the Rise ban actually has a lot to do with Cloud9's first pick, which is Lissandra. Because as I've stated previously, Rise is a counter to Lissandra for reasons that you can find in another video. Clutch Gaming, after responding to the Lissandra first pick, are going to be bringing out Karthus and Lucian. So this is interesting. So Lucian could go into the bottom lane at this point. This is definitely a flex Lucian. And it's probably a triple flex. And then Karthus is going to be a double flex. So what I think here is that I would not believe that Karthus would follow into the mid lane even if C9 choose to bring Lissandra into the mid lane, even though it's not a bad matchup for him, because I disagree with putting Piglet on a champion like that. Whereas I think that Huni is fine playing that champion. The Lucian pick is a little bit odd. If it's not planned at going bottom lane at all. Since we know that probably the better Lucian player has to be Piglet. But being able to flex that in between two lanes or possibly three is nice. And then Karthus can also flex to jungle, which I didn't quite go into detail, but we've seen Clutch play Karthus jungle earlier in the split. It's still not the worst thing in the world. It's not the best thing in the world either. It kind of depends on the matchup and if you're able to get something where Karthus is allowed to power farm and maybe even get some free camps here and there from the enemy because they're focused on something else. Cloud9 respond with their bottom lane picks. So against the Lucian, they go ahead and they take away Braum, and then they take out Jinx. So Jinx is really strong in the meta right now, kind of undervalued by a lot of teams. She turns into a late game hyper carry, and she has a lot of her own self peel ever since her W was buffed. Not the E. Sorry, the traps. The traps were buffed so that dashes can't go through them, whereas before you could dash through them. That changes a lot. It functions like Veigar E now. So Jinx with the self peel and her passive and the insane late game damage, along with the fact that her laning phase isn't that bad either, just from having a whole bunch of range from rockets, makes her pretty oppressive right now. Rakan. So when Clutch Gaming pick Rakan here, I think it says a little bit about the draft. So you wouldn't necessarily pick Rakan into Braum. So when Clutch picks We're Khan here. I don't know what they're thinking. I'm actually confused. So this is tough. Like this is not something that's ideal for Clutch Gaming. And remember, this is Clutch Gaming's game out of playoffs. They are already out of playoffs. So it's not very important that they have the best draft in the world. If they want to play something that isn't particularly conventional, then that's perfectly fine. I think that Clutch is really just trying to stick to something that might be comfort, even if it's not necessarily good. So I'll talk a little bit more about this after we finish through the draft. So Clutch Gaming decided to ban out. They split bans between jungle and top. Aatrox and Nocturne. Cloud9 go ahead and they ban out Rumble and Vladimir because they say, well, we'd think that the Karthus ban or the Karthus pick is going to be going into the jungle most likely. So that could be Cloud9's perspective. Or even if they don't think that, then maybe they would like that Huni gets that champion rather than Huni getting something else that he might be able to do more work on in the mid game. Because when you pick up Jinx like this, then you probably want to allow Jinx time to scale without anything that could really hurt her, gimp her, such as AoE damage that's really hard for her to dodge. Clutch Gaming, after the second ban phase, go ahead and pick up Lee Sin. So Lee Sin definitely comfort for Lyra. This would go along with that theory. Cloud9 finish out their draft with Rek'Sai and Gangplank. So Gangplank on blue side is really strong because it's really hard to dive him, and then they also pick up Rek'Sai for some early game pressure. That's going to be going with Lissandra. So this looks really interesting from Cloud9. They have a hyper carry who is playable around in the early game even. Braum actually helps enable that due to the fact that he can protect Jinx pretty easily with his shield. They draft 2 picks that'll be good in the early mid game, get some lane control, and be able to run towards the bottom lane. And then they also have the Gangplank ult, which was recently buffed, by the way. I think it was buffed in patch 9.5. So this looks really good. It looks like a comp with early mid capabilities in terms of like options, early mid options for aggression that just scales really nicely. And they team fight really well. So the only thing that's going to be really useless in late game is probably Rek'Sai, but she can turn into a tank at some point. Clutch Gaming finished out the draw for Chaya, so this is sending Lucian mid, and then Karthus top. So they're sending Karthus against Gangplank, so that's going to be a scaling lane in top. Let's go ahead and see that all drafted. So this is going to be a scaling lane. And Karthus doesn't really want to get the push. Karthus wants GP to push into him. That's going to be the goal of Huni. If Huni pushes and he loses flash, it's going to be easy pressure for Rek'Sai, especially early, and that could really give Gangplank a lead. So Lissandra's going to be pushing in Lucian, but okay, actually, I don't want to say anything sober about this matchup. This is probably going to be about how they play it, and not about how it should work out in theory. This is going to be a lot of should Piglet be pushing, should Golden Glue be pushing, or should they not be pushing, or do they have information on the enemy jungler, and how can they impact the map, and can they win the 2v2 at that point, or can they win the 2v2 if they get the jump, or where can they get advantages, because both picks in the mid lane here are aggressive. Both jungle picks are aggressive. And in a perfect 2v2 before level 6, and by perfect I mean nobody's like missing anything that's key, Clutch Gaming actually have the advantage, only because Lucian's probably going to be taking press the attack. So if they get on Rek'Sai is going to get insta-bopped. And they could probably trade 2 for 1. And then bot lane is Rakan can be aggressive, but they can't really do a whole lot against Braum. Braum shield will be up about the time that Rakan's W Grand Entrance will be up. Until Rakan gets points in that, and at that point Braum will already be tanky enough so that it doesn't really matter for him to have it all the time, or they'll be able to get most of the push in the lane anyway, or Lissandra will be roaming down to the bot. But they'll push early, because Braum's probably not going to push. So we're going to be looking like this. And then junglers will be like this. Interesting. So Rek'Sai is going to be doing top mid, Clutch is going to be doing mid bot to try and get these people ahead. This guy scales, and this will be try to get these people ahead, and then this guy scales. After level 6, then you're probably going to see both teams do the same thing. They can converge on the bot, and then there's a global ult in top. And this is so interesting. To have 2 global ults in top lane, because that means almost nothing will ever happen in top lane. They'll always do something bot because they have the globals and they're able to spread. They're able to help out the map even without being there. So it's probably just going to be a farm lane the entire game. So as I was saying before, I think this was really strange because Braum was picked really early. And when Braum's picked really early, Rakan generally you don't want to play into Braum. You want to play Rakan in a lane where you're allowed to be aggressive. And it's really hard to be aggressive in a Braum because once he puts up shield, even if Rakan got the Grand Entrance, then he's not really going to take any damage. I think forcing the Lucian pick mid is really strange. Rather than, like, if this is a counter, like if this is like some kind of secret counter that Piglet has to Lissandra, or if this is just something Piglet wanted to play, I have no idea. But if I look at these 4 champions and I think, okay, well, if I thought about who the player was and what I've seen the player play and how I see the player play, I think, okay, well, these guys probably asked for Rakan. Piglet probably asked for Lucian. Lyra probably asked for Lee Sin. Huni might have asked for Karthus. Huni just seems to kind of like play everything, so I don't know what he could actually want to play. And that could be part of the reason why the draft isn't exactly conventional. And I think that's fine. They do have some win conditions, but their win conditions are tough. Considering the fact that I'm not really sure if Rakan and Karthus will beat Jinx and Gangplank late game. I don't think that they do, and I think a big factor in that is the Braum. I think Braum really makes it difficult. I think Lissandra's really going to make that difficult, and I don't think that Lucian is actually going to be providing that much utility, and they have almost no tank. So there's a whole lot going on here that Clutch Gaming lacks a few important resources, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't win. They have this 2v2 mid that they can play for. Wait a second. Everything just changed. Did Piglet ask to play? Okay. I'm sorry. They didn't switch mid and top until really late in the draft. So I actually thought that Piglet was playing Lucian. So with Karthus mid, this actually lets Lyra play for side lanes. And I have said a lot that I think Lyra is really good at playing for side lanes. This also makes their side lanes push. So this is really good for Lyra, but I'm not sure why you would put Piglet on such a champion that doesn't allow him to play like we all know Piglet likes to play. Piglet likes to play extremely aggressive. He likes to play. He likes to be a playmaker. And this doesn't seem like the kind of champion that suits him. But maybe if it's what he wanted to play, then that could be the actual reason behind the draft. So I'm pleasantly surprised with the draft from both teams. Clutch, Clutch. I don't really like the draft, but I think that it has clear win conditions. I don't think that they adapt within draft, like ever, throughout the end of the season. So here I'm actually making assumptions because this is the end of the season for Clutch. So this is everything that you guys are going to hear from me about this team, or at least this season. They do not adapt in draft. They have never adapted in draft, like the whole season. Maybe they did a little bit, but it should be common for your draft to have options. By options, I mean like you consistently have different variations of how the draft could go. That way, if one draft isn't particularly good, like the one ideal like draft that you really want, if that isn't good, you can replace something because maybe it got countered in some way. Anyway, let's talk about these couple things here. So one, CG responded to what was a early pressure, like possibly for Vision invade from Cloud9, and they were able to get Diamond's Flash, so that's really good for them. I don't know why Lyra's helping Piglet push the lane. Lyra got a little bit of Piglet's experience. But during that, Huni also just got some deep vision, and he's going to be going for an invade while CG are running from a bot. For a bot gank. That was such a good response from Vulcan. Except I don't think he had the flash that like you normally want to try and flash like as soon as possible. If an enemy has a way of re-engaging onto you. But I don't think that I think if he was able to give Blabber the knock-up and then flash away, maybe it could have done something. I don't know. Maybe he was just insta-dead here, just due to the way that the gank was formatted. He allowed Cody's son to get out without using flash. But that's really a shame that they lose 3 summoner spells to Blabber's 1. The Lyra does get topside jungle, which is really good for him, but Lee Sin by himself isn't that amazing at fighting Rek'Sai early. Okay, so CG started off the game. Lyra's got a lead on CS. He hasn't actually gotten his red yet, which is a little interesting. He's just been focusing on farming. He's going to be ahead on levels, but he's not necessarily going to be ahead on pressure just because Rek'Sai already got so much success in bottom lane that he's essentially gimped. He's gimped Chaya Rakan, and it's not important. And this goes into like map and how the map benefits each side. So this style of map is actually much more powerful than this style of map. If you see me drawing on the screen. So this style of map, when you lose this top tower on blue side, it doesn't actually mean a whole lot, because you're not losing a whole lot of jungle area. You can still contest these two camps. You still have a main corridor between mid and top and your outermost top tower at that time period. And there's no reason to actually be able to push that far in the top side if you're not looking to play aggressive in the enemy jungle past the river. Whereas if you lose this bottom tower, you lose any control around dragon that you could possibly want, and it becomes more difficult for you to control your bottom side camps than it would be try and just combat your blue buff, which would be the only thing that you end up really worrying about on top side, because Gromp isn't exactly the highest experience giving camp, or and blue buff isn't is really only useful for the mid laner. Wow, that is unfortunate. Okay, hold on. So Gangplank's not worried about losing pressure on top side. He just wants to hold out so that he doesn't get all the plating. We're about to see a bot play that goes horribly wrong from what I understand. Okay, Lissandra teleports mid. CG says they don't have any teleports. CG says Lyra's ganking, we're gonna go in. They try to fight and Keith just destroys them. I'm a little confused. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. So what we're about to see is Lyra ends up taking the long way around for a gank on bottom side. I can't tell if this is like going in too early, or if they could even have a whole lot of pressure here. I think they could have had more pressure. But Lyra had to move in. Chaya has a pink ward. Alright, so let me say what CG could have done here. I'm hitting the wrong button. Okay. So CG right here. Before they actually go in. Katie-san's actually holding a pink ward. You can use this spot, I think it's this spot, and you press on the top of the tree. I don't know, there's a way to place a pink ward here, just so that Lyra is able to get into the map, if necessary, or to know if the enemy has a ward here, but it'll deny the C9 the vision. And if C9 decides not to back off because there's a cannon wave, that was a cannon wave, right? Oh no, they already got their cannon. But if they decide to back off their own minions, then Lyra can just walk right in. He'll be able to help Vulcan here. If you do think about the situation, Vulcan actually has to engage at level 3. Okay? So when Vulcan engages at level 3, and both the levels are actually really important. He would do more damage, he would be tankier. He did level up in the fight, but he would probably put that point in Grand Entrance, which would do more damage. I guess it wouldn't change anything actually. It would only change the amount of damage that he did, because he did level up in the fight. But the issue is that Lyra needs to be in the lane when he engages, Because Jinx is just so strong at damaging one target because Pow Pow gives gives a lot of attack speed. So they're able to just eat Rakan, and when they eat Rakan, then Cody's Sun can't exactly do something either. The Karthus ult comes in. That's also just useless. It doesn't change anything because it's only going to do about 200 damage. And if Keith is sustaining perfectly fine, he hasn't taken a whole lot of damage. He can double heal with the pots and the biscuits that he has. And there's really nothing bad that can happen to him if they're not able to all get on him at the same time. So this is just bad communication from Clutch. It was not well set up. I feel really bad watching that because you'd think that Clutch has like a key advantage there, but they really don't because of the way that Jinx has that niche of damaging a single target. And this also goes with the fact that like they don't have a tank in the bottom lane, they don't have a tank in the jungle, they don't have anyone that can sustain that damage, not even in the early game. And that's a problem. Okay, so C9 go to control the bottom side river. Looks like they want to be able to get this stone dragon, the mountain dragon. What a nice setup. So what happened here actually was we don't get to see it all. Piglet actually flashed as he got ulted by Lissandra. So remember that's a 1.5 second stun. And then Blabber actually gets to flash onto him as well. And Blabber ults. But I guess it's kind of overkill, but the Jinx rocket comes too. And the Jinx rocket just finishes him off at a couple HP. The ult actually is probably the reason that he died. He would have been able to use that ult to sustain a bit longer. Or because he was there for so long, he probably could have walked away and walked towards Braum. So if that was communicated a little bit better by C9, C9 could have taken advantage of the situation. So that kill going to Piglet is actually pretty good for Clutch. It won't change a huge amount because Karthus needs a whole lot of items before he's going to be a big issue for Cloud9. Yeah, that ult from Blabber really was not good. Now that I get to see it better, it just put him in a bad situation. So just bad communication. Because when that Jinx rocket goes and Piglet's like stuck in one spot and he doesn't have flash anymore, he can't dodge it. Because Jinx rocket travels very fast. That could have been better communicated, and Blabber could have gotten out. It's a shame. So C9 rotate onto the dragon that they've wanted to get the previous play. CG make no attempt at a contest, because an attempt at a contest really just means certain death. They don't have any pressure mid lane. And the mid lane priority is hard to play with if you don't have any of it ever. But I don't want to talk a lot about the draft from Clutch Gaming. I know I talked a lot about Clutch Gaming and how the theory of drafting like a good composition, or at least the theory from like a mathematical perspective. And I don't think that that talking about Clutch Gaming's draft this game is particularly important, because I feel like the strange manner in which they drafted could be caused by the reason that the draft was not that important either. It wasn't actually going to change the results. I think that the players should want to win, but if it is the end of the season game and it's not going to change anything for them, then maybe they are able to perform on whatever they so desire. Oh. 2 for 3 in the favor of Cloud9. Let me break this down. So Huni's got pushed on top lane. Huni does not have ult. GP has teleport. Piglet ult or teleports into the back line. So this initially looks really good for Clutch Gaming. This is before you see any kind of flank. You actually see the damage coming out from Keith is huge. So the Keith did about that much to everybody, because I believe he has that rune hand. I just want to see it again to make sure I'm looking right. Yeah, I believe that's him. Is Clutch able to get out of this play with the same amount of success? Yes. So if Clutch are able to realize that Lissandra should be coming soon, they are able to get out now, but they don't. They keep going. Cody-san does realize. Cody-san does spend flash, but that leaves Vulcan, and I mean, I don't think all of them would have gotten out. Like Lissandra did have flash. Lissandra was definitely going to force someone's death because they were low. But that does leave Vulcan and Lyra to death, and the Karthus was already dead. He's in passive. He's not able to recuperate a whole lot. Jeez, Lissandra passive, decimating the wave, and that gives First Blood Tower to C9 as well. So the idea behind this play is that Huni's not able to pressure Gangplank enough to get top lane tower. CG already lost the plates on the bottom lane tower. CG are trying to make a play to get a First Blood Tower. They want to make a big play, get big results, get First Blood Tower, and then get themselves back into the game. If they can get Shaya to a point where she is usable for fights, then they can fight when they have Karthus ult, and it's still pretty strong. And Huni will always be strong this game, just because he gets the free lane, the free farm, and the abuse onto Kumo. But they overcommit a little bit. Sorry. They overcommit a little bit, and they're not able to get a lead, and it actually ends up losing them First Blood Tower. So this is definitely a high risk, high reward play. What would have been better? I honestly don't know. It's hard to say what's better here, because when you think about the fact that they were going to lose that tower anyway, and that all of its turret plating was gone anyway, what they really wanted was they just wanted a First Blood Tower gold. They wanted to try and upset that play, and they were able to upset some stuff. They got a big shutdown gold, and that big shutdown gold onto who got the kill into Jinx. Who did get that? Piglet got it. Okay, so Piglet actually is wealthy right now, and because Piglet is wealthy, he will be able to affect the game a little bit more and a lot faster. He's ahead of the curve on Karthus. So because he's ahead of the curve, then he'll be pretty scary when it comes to later mid game fights when he gets a second item. But what Clutch really want is to get Chaya into the game so that she's useful and she's scary, because they already know Huni can. And if they can make them scary enough so that they're able to go ahead and kill Jinx, possibly with the help of Karthus R, then killing Jinx actually makes the rest of the game a little bit easier. So if they're able to kill Jinx and they can deal with the rest, then they're going to be worried about just trying to take advantage of anything that they can to get more and more ahead. But they have a whole lot of ground to make up in this game at this point, if they want to win. He missed that cannon. That was depressing. C9 are playing this game really calmly. C9 could be a more aggressive. Like when they have Lissandra ultimate and Lissandra builds this aggressive item, and they have Gangplank ultimate, they do have a lot of tools to get onto one person and force a big play. They're kind of waiting for CG to make an error first, I guess. That seems to be the whole point of what they're doing here. So CG have Piglet top lane. They're moving Piglet top lane. Piglet does not have ult. They show up mid just to get some damage off. Get teleported on. Oops. And Huni gets punished. This is pretty sad for Clutch. So Clutch probably not aware that there's a ward there. That is a pretty unfortunate setting for them to be in. Because they're not aware of that ward, because it's actually right outside of tower vision, then Huni didn't think that he could get punished for trying to get some free damage off. And trying to take advantage of the fact that, hey, like, he's strong, if he can make a difference, then maybe it'll help out the game. But just that small mistake, C9 ravage into CG, and they're able to get 2 mid towers instantly. So this opens up the map a lot. They also end up rotating Lissandra bot after the play, because they've already got the push him bot. Which is strange. You'd think that Huni would actually be bot now, to kind of collect this wave as it comes in and then bounce it back out, to try and put pressure onto C9, try and split them up. That's what they have Piglet doing. So you'd think that they'd be running sort of this 1-3-1 to try and split up C9 to make sure that they aren't able to do anything super aggressive. Because CG does have like a bit of wave clear across the board. Like Chaya has quite a bit of wave clear. But it looks like instead they were trying to play a 4-1 with a Karthus ult up, and it just didn't do anything. And this damage going on to Braum, like what are you gonna do to Braum? Yeah, this is strange. I think CG just like wants to fight. They just wanna do something. They're anxious. Huni's probably anxious. He wants something to happen that could possibly send the game in their favor. Whereas really, like, he just needs to set up the conditions to make them in a position where they're able to do something positive for the team. But it ends up just making things worse. So now they lose their entire bot side of the map. And their map just pretty much looks like this. when your map looks like this, I mean, really, you've lost both top towers already. C9 are going to go through. They're going to get vision here. They're going to get vision here. They might get a deep ward there, but they're going to pink the other two locations. They're going to sweep the entire mid-top corridor. They're going to sweep the entire river, and they're going to take both of these towers, and then they're going to try and force Baron. I mean, they have a Mountain Dragon. They have a Jinx. They have an execute. They'll probably try and force Baron, and they'll force a fight over it if they can. That didn't go their way. What did this start with? Piglet gets caught out. Rakan gets on the Golden Glue. Golden Glue ends up being over aggressive. They weren't playing with Keith too much. Karthus ult is actually really strong. All the funneled gold in the Karthus did make a big difference there, because when he was able to get out ult. Allows CG to get some mid-tower damage, but honestly, Keith is so strong, and he has red buff right now, so he healed back all that HP that he lost from Karthus ult. And it really just ends up being a 1-for-1 for CG. So nothing's going to change. C9 is still going to try and get those top towers. They might go for this Cloud Drake if they find it. You know, they might try Cloud Drake. It all depends on the style of C9. Like, can they just go force 2 top towers and Cloud Drake will probably still be on the map, or CG will leave the top towers not contest at all just because they can get a Cloud Drake and maybe it'll help them do something? Sure. Do you want the enemy team to have Cloud Drake when you're doing Baron? Maybe not. Wow. Piglet is really pushed up in the side lane. So this is a little greedy, pushing up this far in the side lane. They have 0 vision in this entire sector. So when Piglet pushes up, and then, like, I understand, like, this is, if you don't push up and push the wave onto the enemy tower so that it doesn't bounce, it's bad. Like, it does not help CG, but also pushing it up so the fact that, you know, they can just rotate onto you and kill you. Like, having Karthus not on the map, that definitely leads to Dragon instantly. Okay, here's the setup on top side. Wow. Sandra hurts because she built actual damage. It's not that Piglet build on Lissandra that we saw yesterday, which is like its utility, but no, this is a carry Lissandra. Looks like they're not even going for tier 2 top tower. They just want to force Clutch Gaming to come to the Baron. They might even finish it. Wow. Might have to watch that slower. Okay. So they bring the Baron to 2k HP. They know the fight's actually about to come. Rakan makes the engage. Keith is on Piglet. Piglet forced Zonya's. Piglet getting DPS down. Piglet's in the back line. Piglet gets ult off. Rakan just gets actually deleted. He gets ulted by, or he gets like QW'd by Lissandra, and he just gets Q'd by, he gets parlayed. And then they're able to finish off the Baron. That's probably going to be a 1-3-1 from C9. Probably just, I mean, like, they could just, like, 5-mana lane and probably force the end, but looks like they're going to do the 4-1. They don't have the pushing top lane. They don't want to waste Baron time, I'm sure, by trying to get top lane pushed out. Because they already had these lanes better set up when they came onto the board. So they came on the board, they didn't have any top waves, they only had the one. They have more waves in other lanes, so they moved to other lanes where they had better waves, and they could just easily force inhib towers. Now they pull a 4-1. And this should do quick work of CG's towers. And if Jinx is able to touch tower, it's just dead. So Baron buff has still got about 1 minute and 45 seconds on it. Inhibitor bot is already down. Inhibitor mid is about to go down. Looks like they're not going to force a fight. So CG's not making their Hail Mary. I don't know if they're close to a big item or not. I honestly have no idea what Karthus is building. Like, why do you have Needless and then Blasting Wand? Rabadon's doesn't build out of that anymore. Okay, so they let 2 inhibs go, and they say, okay, we're gonna let this game keep going. Top tower gets instantly taken because they are not even allowed to control that zone. They have to do a Hail Mary before they lose 3rd inhib. So, I mean, there's got to be a fight here, unless CG just gets strangled to death, which would be them just not saying that they'd prefer to be strangled to death rather than to fight, which doesn't sound very fun, and it's really not very impressive, and it's not very doesn't make me like respect CG as a team, because I've seen them fight before, but like they tend not to. Like, you don't want to finish off the season like trying to put a band-aid on your KDA, like and not like this game's really gonna help anyway. But you want to finish out the season fighting. And taking a couple high-risk plays earlier in the game, I can understand that, like, you know, they're trying to break barriers. They want to have that fight, but it only made things really difficult for them because they didn't have really great conditions for those fights either. Draft wasn't great conditions to force those mid-game fights, because they didn't really get a lead around top. Looks like they tried to do something here around the inhib. Not really much happened off that. That's gonna be game. Alright, so conclusions about Clutch. There are things that Clutch just hasn't learned this split. And I think that when a team makes the same error over and over again, there is either a disagreement between support staff and one or more players. So support staff encompasses everyone that works within the staff. So this would not just be the coach, Scrags, but the other coaches as well, and the analysts, whoever gets to work with the players directly, that has a big say in the analysis and how the team needs to change. There's a disagreement between the support staff and players. Or the support staff lack experience or understanding of, maybe they are smart about the game, but maybe they're not very good at teaching it. I mean, like, it's kind of difficult to train a player to do something. Teaching a player something is a lot different than training them something. I've had to, and usually you want to learn to teach someone something before you can train them something. So throughout my experience, I've had to learn how to teach someone, to learn how to train someone, and then learn the different processes that are involved in both of those, and see how they mesh together. And it's been a tough it's been tough to gain progress on learning how to properly perform that, not finding any disagreements, or understanding how to go about when it's a different player personality, or when a player just doesn't learn the same way. And you have to use this idea that logic is one thing, but you can view the same truth from different vantage points. And you want to be able to identify the vantage point that someone learns and someone really is able to apply. And you want to be able to use that vantage point while you're teaching and training them. And sometimes, I mean, obviously in the same team, you're going to have to learn how to use several of those. To discover and identify for them, and to help them do it themselves, the same truth from a different perspective is a difficult task. So this would be an unpopular opinion. I don't know if this is true. Remember, these things are not necessarily both true. They could be both true. One of them could be true, or neither of them could be true. But these are only suppositions that I seem to pick up on. There is so these two things leak into a lot of other things. So the disagreements could change a lot about draft, or the lack of experience could change a lot about draft. It's probably more the disagreements, and the reason that we see drafting errors all split might have to do with more with the players and the coaches not getting along, or it might have to do with the lack of experience of the coaches and preparing drafts and having optimal options in draft, having multiple draft variations. Maybe they don't have a very good scouting team who helps them prepare for drafts against teams. There is quite a bit going on. NALCS has a lot of staff in every team, so there are a lot of interactions and things that different people are very focused on, where if more than one role is not completing the job at a satisfactory level, then things start to crumble. And this is it's more easy to identify what's going on in regions where there's not that much support staff. Like, there might be 2 coaches or 1 coach and 1 analyst and the team. Like, you can see, okay, well, it's either one of these 3 areas where there's an issue. But me specifically, diagnosing CG with an issue is very difficult. But one of these 2 things is definitely an issue, because they have consistently not been able to improve, or at least not much, in terms of drafting and in terms of high risk and mid game decision making. And this is really not including what I've seen today, because I think that this game shouldn't be counted against players or even the organization, because it's outside of the playoffs. But it's still interesting to think about, like, what could be going wrong, and I wish I knew more. And I would like to sit down with somebody who was in the environment, maybe even Demonte, because Demonte got benched, so it would be actually really interesting to sit down with Demonte and talk about what the environment is like, and from there look to diagnose an issue. maybe we'll get to do that. Maybe we won't. Anyway, that is going to be the conclusion to our series on reviewing Clutch Gaming's games, all the VOD reviews of every game that they've played this split. That was 18 games. That was really fun. We've seen a couple variations of this team. They still are stuck on not having a really good style or win condition that they consistently play for. And seeing them do roster changes right at the end of the split to try and make up for something. I don't know, I feel like it's too late at that point. If you were going to make a roster change, you probably have to do it middle split, just so that like by the end of the split, if you really needed those 2 wins, those 3 wins, then maybe they would be able actually to make up for it. But giving a team like with different roster, so you changed the role of a player and you brought in a new player, just like 1 week of scrims for to increase their level of play up to satisfactory, not even to beat middle tier teams, but high tier teams, is difficult. I hope that everybody who's watched this series enjoyed it a lot, as I enjoyed creating it. Thanks to our sponsor, Duca, who has been very kind and should be crowned as the #1 CG fan. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful night.